Alright, and welcome to graphing square root inverses. Now, in example 1, it says graph f inverse of x, and you'll notice that f of x is in fact a square root function. Now, what would it look like to just go ahead and graph that right off the bat? Well, let's see. I see that I'm going to be searching for the value of x that makes x plus 2 equal to 0. And so we can say, well, you know what, x plus 2 is equal to 0, minus 2, and x is equal to negative 2. Therefore, our x value is negative 2. We see that our constant is negative 5, and we have this negative 2 comma negative 5. We can go to the left 2 and down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And of course, here is our first point. And we know that a square root function, when it's positive here and the x value is positive, will look something like that. Now, remember, we are ultimately going to reflect this across the line y equals x. And if our vertex is at negative 2 comma negative 5, well then we know that for f inverse of x, we know that our vertex should be at negative 5 comma negative 2. Okay, but let's go ahead and see if that's true first. We know that we're going to start this problem off by changing f of x into y. And so we can say, well, you know, y is equal to the square root of x plus 2 minus 5. We know that from here, we're going to swap our x and our y, keeping everything else in the same position. And from here, let's go ahead and solve for y. Let me go ahead and erase all that. Okay, so we know that the very first thing that we're going to do is get rid of our subtraction. We'll add 5 to both sides. We now have x plus 5 is equal to the square root of y plus 2. Well, from here, we know that in order to get rid of a square root, we have to square both sides. And so I can square that side as well. Now this will give us x plus 5 squared is equal to our square root and square cancel, simply y plus 2. And our final step is to subtract 2 from both sides. And what we're going to wind up with is this. We're going to wind up with f inverse of x is equal to x plus 5 squared minus 2. Now what I'd like for you to do is pause the video, finish taking your notes, and let me clean this up just a little bit. Okay, now that we have this, what we want to do is go ahead and test out the vertex. Well, I see that here inside that we have x plus 5. Of course, we'll set that equal to 0. We can subtract 5 from both sides, and we realize our x value is negative 5. Well, our x value is at negative 5, comma, and our constant is at negative 2. And what would this look like? Well, we'd go to the left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'd go down 2, and now one thing I want to show y'all is this should actually only look like this. This is going to be a little bit strange in saying this. Actually, you know what, since it is a quadratic function now, we can actually complete it. I was a little unsure at first, but yes, I believe that this is in fact correct. Okay, and notice there is our inverse function of f of x. Alright, let's go ahead and do one final example. Alright, here we have example 2, where f of x is equal to 1/4 square root of y minus 3 plus 2, and we want to graph f inverse of x. Well, let's just go ahead and run through that rather quickly. We know that we're going to change our f of x into y, and we now have y is equal to 1/4 the square root of, the square root of x. Oh my goodness, guys. Y'all have my apologies. Here, I had accidentally written a y instead of an x. So let's try this again. So we have y is equal to 1/4 square roots of x minus 3 plus 2. Now we can go ahead and switch our x and our y, and now we can have 1/4 square roots of y minus 3 plus 2. Well, notice at this point we want to go ahead and solve for y. So we can subtract 2 from both sides. That goes away. I now have x minus 2 is equal to 1 over 4 square roots of y minus 3. And remember, in order to get rid of a fraction, we multiply by the reciprocal, which is 4 over 1. But multiplying by 4 over 1 is simply the same as multiplying by 4. And let's go ahead and even distribute that. We can say, 4 times x is 4x. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8 is equal to the square root of y minus 3. Well, how do we get rid of a square root? We go ahead and we square both sides, and we now have 4x minus 8 squared is equal to y minus 3. The last thing that we would want to go ahead and do is we get rid of that minus 3 by adding 3, and you'll notice that we can go ahead and write our final form of this inverse function as f inverse of x is equal to parentheses 4x minus 8 squared plus 3. And we now have exactly enough information to graph this. Pause this, finish taking any notes, and let's go ahead and graph it finally. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is I want to say, you know what, inside here I have x minus 3, and I can set x minus 3 equal to 0. I, of course, add 3 to both sides, and I know x is equal to 3. Therefore, my vertex for here will be 3, comma, and our constant is 2. Alright, let's do a different color. Let's use red. Here I know that inside my square I have 4x minus 8. I set that equal to 0, and of course I add 8 to both sides, and I have 4x is equal to 0 plus 8 is 8. We divide both sides by 4, and we get x is equal to 2. Therefore, our x value is 2, and our constant is positive 3. And one thing, as I'm about to erase this, pause the video, finish taking these notes, but I want you to notice that our vertices, our vertices, notice that they are, oh my goodness, sorry for the mistakes, guys. Notice that they are simply the same thing flipped, because every inverse is just switching the x and the y. Okay, well now we have enough information. In orange, let's graph f of x. Our vertex is at positive 3, 1, 2, 3, comma 2. And notice it is a square root function, so it will look like that. How about our quadratic inverse function? Well, it's at 2, comma 3, which would go to the right 2 and up 3. And since it's a quadratic and positive, we know it opens like that. The final thing I would say is if I drew my line y equals x, we know that it's reflected across that. Y'all can quite clearly see that, and that's how you graph the inverse of a square root function. Alright guys, good luck, and I'll catch y'all in our next lesson.